I stuck with the autoimmune paleo diet. I mean, I had some cheats here and there because I was frustrated, but overall I stuck with it. After 6 months, I felt so good that I was off of omeprazole by that point, and I was off of iron. I was taking no medications, and I had lost, 6 months, I had lost about 60 pounds, I think, by that point. I was feeling really good. And then shortly after that, I cheated on the diet again because I was feeling so good, and I was like, I want to treat myself. It's my birthday. And then I didn't experience any huge symptoms from that. So I cheated again like a month later for Christmas, you know? And it was such a bad choice. I did not bounce back from that. Hi everyone. Welcome to, it's not actually an episode at all, but welcome to Health Impaired, Health Inspired. Today's video is actually all about me. Not to be, self-centered or anything, but a lot of times when you start a channel like this, people want to know more about you and your background and the things that you've been through or what brought you here. So this video is dedicated to talking about my health journey and why I started the videos. I'm going to start by talking about my childhood. When I was really young, my parents didn't have a lot of money, and so we really couldn't afford like super nice healthy food, and both of my parents worked, and my mom, who was responsible for feeding us, also worked a full-time job, and she was just very busy. And for many years of my youth, she basically raised us by herself. So we ate meals like Hamburger Helper, and we ate, that was really common actually. We had like freezer meals where we would just like pull a ton of stuff out of the freezer, like chicken nuggets and mozzarella sticks and tater tots, and we'd just like throw all of it in the oven and make a meal out of that. Or we would have, like, if we were lucky, she'd make something homemade like sloppy joes or spaghetti. And a lot of nights it was just mac and cheese and hot dogs. And she always made us have a vegetable, but the term vegetable in our household usually meant either corn, green beans, or peas of the canned or frozen variety. So we're not talking like fresh veggies, okay? And with autoimmune conditions like mine, diet is a factor. Also, genetic background is a factor. So your genetics present about 1/3 of your risk of getting an autoimmune condition. So there's that. But I think I can really trace all of my symptoms of my condition back to age 11. And the trigger or the thing that started it all, I believe, was a venomous snake bite. And that's just kind of an interesting part about my past anyway, but I was bitten by a copperhead snake when I was 11. It was an interesting experience. But after that point, I mean, I spent all summer off my feet. I spent all summer basically laying down or sitting and reading and watching TV shows and, snacking. I did develop some bad habits at that time, but I didn't know how that was really going to play out. And looking back, I blamed some of my weight issues and my other health issues that came up on those habits that formed during that time, rather than the snake bite itself. Not thinking about how snake bites, like venom, will actually trigger an immune response. It's a huge stressor on the body. So of course it's going to trigger an immune response, Why didn't I think of that? I got into like middle school shortly after that, and I continued to gain weight. My diet was terrible. And I think by that point I was already struggling with fatigue, but it was hard for me to know what that looked like because, I was still a kid and I was able to keep up enough with like some of my peers. It just wasn't that noticeable yet. But as you guys might know, when you're really tired, your body screams out for energy. And what do you want when you're like really tired? Sugar, carbs. Let me tell you a typical lunch for me in middle school. It's embarrassing. A salted pretzel, no cheese, just the pretzel, and some kind of little Debbie snack, whether that be like a Star Crunch and the big, like a big one, or oatmeal cream pie, the big one, or a honey bun was another common one for me. And then I almost always had a Fruitopia to drink with that, which is really a throwback at this point because Fruitopia is not a thing anymore. But if you were around back then, you know the wonders of Fruitopia, which is it's like pop, but without carbonation. And it was all fruity flavored, but it was definitely not, juice. It was really sugary and probably full of artificial ingredients and colors. Actually, I'm quite certain about that. Fruitopia was so bad for you, but anyway, I ate total crap. And my health started to decline even more. Surely, or actually around that time, I developed severe depression, and it was really difficult to pinpoint why that came about. My counselor that I saw said, maybe you're feeling guilty about your parents' divorce, like maybe you're the reason for that. And I was like, no, I never ever thought it was my fault that my parents divorced. In fact, I viewed it as a pretty good thing that my parents got divorced. I was sad that my dad didn't live with us anymore and I only got to see him every other weekend, but it just didn't explain the level of depression that I struggled with. But my diet and the depression, I don't know, things got kind of worse in high school. I think I did overcome my depression, but I developed acid reflux, which, by the way, I have Hashimoto's. If you don't know, it's on the list of symptoms that are associated with Hashimoto's. There is no reason to believe that it's caused by Hashimoto's, and they don't know why there's so much of a comorbidity between the two. I personally suspect that it has to do with the diet issue. And because your diet has a bearing on acid reflux and autoimmune conditions, I think that's the connection. But I developed acid reflux, and I started taking a drug to help with that called omeprazole, and that prevented my body from absorbing iron appropriately. And then eventually I developed anemia, and then I had to take iron pills for that for a few years. And as you might imagine, anemia contributes to fatigue quite a bit. So in addition to having Hashimoto's, I had anemia. I didn't know I had Hashimoto's though. I only knew that I had anemia. And the doctors that I told about the fatigue would say well, it's because you had anemia. It's because you struggle with anemia. And the only reason I even knew about the anemia was because I would try to donate blood, and sometimes I would get denied because I didn't have a high enough hematocrit level. So I will say, just in hindsight, they were constantly checking my thyroid. The doctors, because of the weight gain and fatigue and depression and stuff, they were constantly checking my thyroid. But they never found a TSH level that was outside of the normal range. I wish so much that they had looked further and dug deeper early on, but they didn't. So we'll never know how early on I got Hashimoto's, but I think it was a snake bite. As I continued throughout high school, I had a struggle with executive functioning. There were a lot of times when I thought perhaps I had ADHD. Later, as an adult, I would be diagnosed with ADHD because I asked for a diagnosis and was kind of tested. So I did get a diagnosis then. Some other symptoms I struggled with, I was fatigued and depressed, but my family called it lazy and unmotivated. I don't know about you, if that's ever been something that people described you as. It's not a fun description for a person, especially one who doesn't feel as though they're trying to be lazy or they purposely are unmotivated. There's sort of an accusation about it in the tone, when they're you're just unmotivated. You just need to use more willpower. like, it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So, I was told I had character flaws. And then fast forward to, I want to say like 2013, 2014, I went to the doctor for like a really bad cold, respiratory type thing. And you know, they always like palpate and feel like lymph nodes, and then they feel your thyroid and stuff. And he noticed a nodule in my thyroid. No one had ever found that before, or had reason. I didn't have a reason to believe that I had a, you know, like a goiter. Although I think I have a bit of a goiter. I mean, internally, they can see it on ultrasound, so I do have a goiter. But anyway, he noticed that, and he scheduled a scan for me, and then gave me a consultation with an endocrinologist. I went to see her in 2014, and I mean, this is my best guess on the year, because I was getting my master's degree at the time. I was talking with her. She said the scan was not that concerning. We're going to keep an eye on it. She's not too worried about cancer at this point. And by the way, it never grew, just spoiler alert. I don't have cancer. But she said, you have a lot of symptoms of Hashimoto's. Perhaps we should test for that. And you know, who knows, maybe you'll have the antibodies for Hashimoto's, even though your TSH and your other typical thyroid hormones are all within range. And she tested, and the test came back positive for the antibodies. This is a TPO antibody test. My TPO antibody test came back positive, and I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. She said, you know, it really could explain a lot of the symptoms that you've been experiencing, although it is abnormal for people to have like all these symptoms, you know, if their TSH isn't really high. And she just basically said, you know, it's more complicated than it seems, but typically we look at these levels because they're a really good indicator right up front if your thyroid is working or not. And as far as she could tell, my thyroid was still functioning fine. She did think that I could benefit from a therapeutic dose of levothyroxine. So I started that medication shortly after that. I went into student teaching around the time that I started levothyroxine. And that was actually 2015, in the like early 2015. And I took levothyroxine for the duration of student teaching, which was extremely stressful. Those of you who have autoimmune conditions know how much stress can cause a flare of your condition, how difficult it is to keep up, how fatigued you might feel. And I mean, I was super overweight by this point. I had slowly gained so much weight that I was probably around 275-ish at the time. So, I mean, I was heavy. And then the levothyroxine really didn't seem to help a lot. It didn't help with my weight management. It didn't help with my overall mood. It didn't seem to help with my executive functioning or ADHD type symptoms at all. And needless to say, I just kind of felt like it didn't really make much of a difference. And I did struggle with some dizziness that semester. I remember being dizzy and getting like a patch that goes behind your ear for that, and it didn't really help. So I was struggling a lot with lightheadedness and dizziness. Anyway, I ended student teaching and moved back home to my original home state to live with my mom for a little bit, and then I found a job teaching about an hour away. And because I had switched the state that I lived in, I no longer had the insurance that I had had before, and I wasn't able to continue seeing an endocrinologist. And since I felt like the medicine didn't really make that much of a difference, I just stopped taking it. I just went off of it. I think looking back that might have been a mistake. I think it did make a little difference for me, but it was so hard for me to see that. You know, I gained more weight that year. I think I tipped the scales around 300 pounds, but I refused to weigh myself, so I don't know that. And I was eating kind of crappy. At some point during teaching that first year, I switched my diet to pescatarian, which is like vegetarian, but you can also have fish. So I wasn't eating any chicken or red meat or anything like that. I continued to struggle with being dizzy and lightheaded and just not feeling good. I was super heavy. I was really depressed. And again, I think I was perceived as being very lazy and unmotivated. And I didn't keep up very well at my job. I really struggled with that. And it was my first year teaching, and I had so much stress on me because they chose to give me 3 class preps when I thought I was signing up for 2. I ended up leaving that job and moving back in with my mom temporarily, during which time I decided to try Weight Watchers, and I stopped doing the pescatarian lifestyle because I wasn't feeling very good on that. And so I tried Weight Watchers, and I lost maybe 15 pounds. I think I was around 275 again by the time I stopped. So somewhere in that range. I started weighing myself, but I felt like I was starving all the time. I just never felt good on Weight Watchers either. I was feeling a little bit better in other ways, but as far as weight loss, it wasn't doing it for me. Keep in mind, I still wasn't on any kind of medication. Then in April of 2018, I was still living with my mother, and I decided I was going to try this new diet that I'd heard about. I was thinking about going vegan, but I asked a friend who's a dietitian about that, and I said, hey, would you recommend going vegan, plant-based? Do you think that would help my symptoms? And she was like, no. No, I don't think it would help. She said that it's really, really hard to get the necessary nutrients that you need to feel really good when you're on a diet like a plant-based diet. She recommended the AIP diet, or autoimmune protocol is what she called it. I've also heard it called autoimmune paleo, AIP for short. And so I started that in April of 2018, and it was such a hard transition of lifestyle. I felt like I was hungry all the time. I wasn't eating hardly any carbs. They all required work on my part. It took a while for me to find convenience foods like the cassava chips that I like to eat, sweet potato chips or plantain chips at the time. And so I did lose weight, and I stuck with it. I started the diet because of, I believed that I had endometriosis. I still believe that I have endometriosis, but you can't know for sure unless you get a laparoscopic exploratory surgery, which is kind of expensive and hard on your body and stressful. And so I've avoided it, but I am considering getting that done one of these days. Any case, I don't have a diagnosis for that, and I was really hopeful that the diet would help me to feel better as far as menstrual pain, because that was a huge thing for me too. I also had back pain, but I was really heavy. So any case, I stuck with the autoimmune paleo diet. I had some cheats here and there because I was frustrated, but overall I stuck with it. After 6 months, I felt so good that I was off of omeprazole by that point, and I was off of iron. I was taking no medications, and I had lost, 6 months, I had lost about 60 pounds, I think, by that point. I was feeling really good. I also discovered through that process that what I thought was ADHD or executive functioning alone was actually brain fog problems. I never understood what brain fog was until all of a sudden I didn't have it anymore. I didn't have the brain fog, and no wonder I was struggling with focus, and no wonder I was struggling with attention and all these things. I had extreme brain fog before that. It is a wonder that I was able to achieve as much as I did, get through school and just do anything, through the brain fog. I felt so much better, and I did experience a huge decrease in the menstrual pain at that time. And 6 months is a really long time to do AIP. It's not intended to stay in the elimination phase that long, but I wasn't feeling quite 100% until that point. And then shortly after that, I cheated on the diet again because I was feeling so good, and I was like, I want to treat myself. It's my birthday. And then I didn't experience any huge symptoms from that. So I cheated again like a month later for Christmas, you know? And it was such a bad choice. I did not bounce back from that. In fact, I've never completely, I mean, I ended up losing more weight after that. A year into the diet, I was down 100 pounds total. I was about 175 to 170 pounds at the time, and I was feeling really quite good actually. But it was a long, hard road after that second cheat at the 7 month mark. And I was feeling good for a little while. And then I think I experienced some kind of like emotional trauma or stress that triggered things. And I just kind of went downhill again after that. I think when COVID came around, I ended up getting COVID at one point. I can't prove that. It was before they even said that COVID was in my part of the world. And I had no idea if it was COVID, but it was early in the pandemic, and I had the worst respiratory infection I've ever had in my life. So needless to say, that caused me to flare. I ended up getting appendicitis, had to get my appendix out. That also caused me to flare, and I couldn't stick with the diet during that time. And since then, I have gone back on the diet. I've improved again, somewhat steadily. That was the surgery I had for appendicitis was about a little over a year ago. And so I am doing pretty well, but there are a lot of things that persist. You know, I gained weight back that I've never been able to take off. Right now, I'm sitting at about 205 to 210 pounds, somewhere in that range, just depending on the day. And I have actually suspected at times that I'm developing another autoimmune condition, such as RA, or perhaps Sjogren's. I have really dry eyes in the morning. I have trouble swallowing at times. I feel really dried out at times. It's just hard, but I am doing okay. I'm taking supplements. I'm taking NP thyroid. I actually started taking NP thyroid last year. I've been on it for I was on Nature Thyroid for a little while, and then that was recalled. So I've been on a thyroid medication again for over a year. I do believe that was the right choice for me. I wish that AIP alone was still doing it for me, but it's just not enough on its own right now. And so I take NP thyroid. Not a huge fan. I loved the Nature Thyroid. I wish I could get back on that. I take beef liver tablets. They are not AIP compliant, not quite, but they are really close, and I do feel better when I take them, so I decided to just keep taking them. I take omega-3s. I take something called adrenal essence because of the NP thyroid. My naturopathic doctor felt that because I'm taking thyroid meds, I might end up with some adrenal fatigue. So she just decided to support my adrenals with adrenal essence. I think it's mostly just like a complex of like B vitamins and stuff, and vitamins, basically herbs and stuff. It's nothing. It's not like cortisol or something like that. Nothing to treat a specific adrenal gland condition, but it does help, and I do notice a difference if I run out of that med and go without it for a day or two. I really rely on my supplements right now, and I'm watching how much I sleep, and I'm watching how much water I drink, and I'm generally just trying to take very good care of myself. And there are times I still feel like it's not enough. In the last year, I have actually in the last few months, I rode a scooter through Walmart. I will gladly share about that experience one of these days. Because I was having such a bad episode of fatigue and joint pain and stuff. So I rode a scooter through Walmart. It's really perceived as not a big deal by people. They don't understand how how profound the effect is health-wise for us, and how much that affects our career and our home lives too. Health is such a puzzle, you know, it's such a puzzle. I never know, like, should I try intermittent fasting? Should I try like a low histamine like approach? Should I change my diet somehow? Should I begin doing yoga even though I have no energy and it hurts? You know, any stress on my body can cause me to flare. So I kind of resist doing a lot of exercise other than maybe walking. But I sometimes get the feeling that my health is worse than ever before, even though I'm just doing so much. I'm making so much effort. I'm spending so much money trying to stay healthy. It's kind of crazy, but I am doing better than when I was about 300 pounds. I am doing better than before as far as being able to put one foot in front of the other, you know, keeping myself from being lazy and unmotivated, which, by the way, I know now that is not the case. I don't have character flaws, so to speak. I am just ill. I just have an autoimmune invisible illness. And it is really hard to explain to others what that means for someone like me. But I'm hopeful that if you are watching this channel, that you're going to keep following me along my journey. I have a lot of things that I've learned that I'd love to share, and some things I want to learn with you on the way. If you're wanting to know more about the privilege that being healthy provides versus, you know, having an invisible illness, and how much disadvantage we have because of that, there is a video for that, so please go check that out. Otherwise, if you want to follow along with my journey, I encourage you to click the like and subscribe buttons and tune in next time. I hope that you leave today feeling less impaired and more inspired, and I want to thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.